Order in the courtroom. Members of the jury, today is your duty to determine whether or not the defendant in this case is guilty or not guilty, based solely on the facts and evidence presented in today's case. The prosecution must prove that there was a crime committed, the defendant committed that crime, and to prove the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. If by the end of this trial you are not satisfied with this, or a reasonable doubt exists, you must find the defendant not guilty. Today we will hear the case of Rotten Tomatoes v. Hook. Hook is a 1991 movie directed by Steven Spielberg that has been charged with the crimes of heinous acts against good taste and being a huge party cake of a movie with too much frosting.
What?
After the first delicious bite, sugar shock sets in. Try saying that 5 times fast. Before we hear the arguments of the defense and the prosecution, I will allow you to have a thorough recap of the movie. Bailiff, roll the tape. Hi, my name is Kyrie and welcome to Flights of Fantasy, the show where we look at different science fiction and fantasy movies and ask, what do they mean? And today we're in court. Let's get into Hook. Hook starts out with the introduction of Peter Pan through the play that Peter Banning is supposed to be watching that has his daughter in it. We're introduced to Peter Banning as a businessman who does very business things in a series of very 90s-esque fashion. Peter has much more fun doing business things than he does in any other area of his life, including watching his children grow up, which he is missing in favor of being an adult. The Banning family flies over to London to meet Granny Wendy.
Hello, boy.
The Wendy Darling that supposedly inspired the Peter Pan stories written by Sir James Barrie. So Wendy is actually Peter's wife's grandma, and the house that they are visiting is actually the house that both Moira and Peter grew up in. Granny Wendy ran an orphanage, and that's actually where Moira and Peter ended up meeting. So the Banning family is over in London because a hospital is dedicating a wing to Granny Wendy based off her work with orphans. The scene during the dedication where everybody in the room stands up because they were orphans of Granny Wendy is actually really touching. But there's no time for feelings here. Something weird is going on at the house. Granny Wendy is feeling faint and there's this green gas filling up the children's room and blankets are flipping up and down and children are screaming. By the time all the adults get home, something has gone terribly wrong. And Toodles, the orphan who was never adopted that still lives into the house to this day, seems to know what's going on. Hook is back. My favorite part about movies from this era is that you can tell what scenes were put in specifically for the trailers. Like this scene where Hook is back. Specifically made for trailers, just to entice audiences to come see it. The stress of the children being gone causes Granny to collapse, and the policemen are really dubious of this whole the children are abducted thing and seem to think that this is a big prank. One of the policemen is Phil Collins. While Moira is away getting her some tea, Granny Wendy explains everything to Peter. The Peter Pan stories are true. Granny Wendy was absolutely in love with Peter when she was a young lady. But Peter Pan would come back pretty sporadically through her life and didn't stop her from getting married. However, Peter did decide to stay on Earth and not go back to Neverland after seeing Wendy's granddaughter Moira. Then he lost all of his memories, and that's when Wendy took him into the orphanage and got him adopted, and so on and so forth. Peter thinks Granny Wendy is, losing it. But then this giant firefly comes through the window and starts talking to Peter. Our Julia Roberts Tinkerbell coerces and then kidnaps Peter all the way to Neverland. And this scene right here, that's George Lucas and Carrie Fisher kissing on a bridge. What a weird movie. So Tinkerbell and Peter end up landing in the pirate docks of Neverland, where Peter is, indeed, a fish out of water here. The acting in this scene, where Robin Williams is acting like Peter, acting like a pirate, is a great example of the physical comedy that a good actor can bring to their roles. It's difficult to do these kind of odd facial expressions with this weird kind of body contortion in a way that's convincing. And it's one of the things that made Robin Williams such a beloved actor of the 90s and 80s and early 2000s. So we see and then we follow Shmi. Hey, wait a minute. That's Bob Hoskins. We know him from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He was Eddie Valiant. One more Bob Hoskins movie, and this channel is going to be the official Bob Hoskins fan club, I swear. Anyway, Shmi takes a freshly sharpened hook to the Captain Hook. I love it when subtle adult humor finds its way into children's movies. Bob Hoskins is an excellent Shmee, and Shmee is the hype man that everybody deserves in their life. So we get some Captain Hook shenanigans, including the boo box.
The boo box.
Eventually Peter is caught out, but he attempts to businessman his way through the pirates to get his children back to him. Hook is perplexed because this old loser does not look like the legendary Peter Pan that he's been hyping his men up to fight for who knows how long.
This pitiful, spineless, pasty, bloated codfish I see before me.
But Peter's got the hook scar on his belly to prove that it's him. Killing this lawyer and his children is just poor sportsmanship at this point, poor form. So Tinkerbell makes him a deal. She has 3 days to get this Peter Pan into fighting shape for their war.
What?
Peter gets saved by some mermaids, and one of my favorite scenes as a child. I always called dibs on being the Green Mermaid when I watch this with my siblings. And then he's delivered to the lair of the Lost Boys. So, time out. Between the awkwardly put snow during this Lost Boys segment, as well as a awkward reference to Santa and it being like a Christmas baseball series during Jack's game, I honestly believe that because this screenplay probably started out with a snowy London scene, the studio approached Steven Spielberg and was like,
hey, so we're releasing this movie in December because that's when all movies that want to win awards are released. And because there's snow, we need to have some more Christmas tie-in.
And then I imagine Steven Spielberg was like,
ew, no.
See, there's snow and we're releasing action figures in time for Christmas shopping, so you have to.
Okay, fine, whatever.
The Lost Boys aren't impressed with Peter Pan. Rufio isn't impressed. God, every time Rufio opens up his fire-bending mouth, I just get happy nostalgia. Sheesh. After a lot of running around and shenanigans,
you're dead, jolly man.
get it? Because it's released in December. Christmas. It's not looking good for Peter as Rufio draws a line in the sand, and all the Lost Boys are obviously on the cool teenage Rufio side. But there's one child that's able to see the child within Peter. And after they all touch his face and get their grubby little hands all over him, the others are able to see it too. So they decide to give Peter Pan a chance. Meanwhile, Shmee is trying to help out Hook, who's having something of an existential crisis. Eventually, he thinks of a satisfying way to really hurt Peter Pan, turning his own children against him.
We could make the little buggers love you.
So that's going on while the Lost Boys are trying to help Peter Pan remember how to fly. Peter has to think of happy thoughts in order to fly, but as an adult, he is not happy, so that's not really working out yet. The Lost Boys have a feast, which is all imaginary. This was one of my favorite scenes as a kid. Peter and Rufio are having these battle of wits, this battle of insults, and Peter starts to use his imagination. And with that, he's able to see and finally interact with the feast. Oh my God, I wanted to eat those pies so badly when I was a kid. The color and the shape of the icing is just, ugh. So the food fight scene actually had to be done twice, and the production actually lost a whole day of filming because all of the costumes and the props and the set had to be cleaned off after the first initial food fight. Gosh, it's details like that that are just like, I love filmmaking. Back with Jack, Captain Hook has taken him to a museum of clocks. Captain Hook is deathly afraid of clocks, but specifically one clock. So in the original story, and back when Peter was Pan, Hook had his hand bitten off by a crocodile who had also swallowed a clock. The crocodile had gotten a taste for Hook and continued to try to follow him to finish off the man. So every time the crocodile got close, Hook would hear that tick-tock, tick-tock. In this movie, it's established that Hook had killed that crocodile a long time ago, but that the deathly fear of the clocks and the tick-tocking was still prevalent. Hook channels all of Jack's anger at his father and how he both breaks promises to be there for him and he doesn't let Jack be a child when he's around. He's always telling Jack to grow up. Furthermore, Jack doesn't even feel like his dad tried to save him and his sister when they're up in that net on the ship. So he channels all of Jack's rage into that clock and is really kind of doing a great job at brainwashing Jack against his dad. Maggie, not so much. but Jack is becoming his kind of secret weapon.
Never letting me blow bubbles in my chocolate milk.
So back with the Lost Boys, this big fella Thudbutt, also called Thud, gives Peter a bag of marbles. This is the bag of marbles that the original orphan Toodles was looking for at the beginning of the movie, and we thought it was a play on words, but no, it was a literal bag of marbles that he had left at Neverland before he came over to Granny Wendy's. Thud talks about how his happy thought are memories of his mother. He asks Peter if he remembers his mother or really anything about being a kid, and Peter doesn't. But hold that thought. There's no time for sentimentality here. Let's talk about baseball. Hook gets the Pirates to play a improvised game of baseball in order to help with the brainwashing of Jack, and Peter can do nothing but watch as Jack is succumbing to this brainwashing. So Peter tries really hard to remember how to fly, and he stumbles upon this house that he and the other Lost Boys made for Wendy when she first came to Neverland. And from there, he basically gets all of his memories back all at once.
I remember.
This is actually a confusing point for the movie. Neverland messes with your memories, both in the original story and in this movie. We see this a bit with Jack, who struggles to remember a life before he was kidnapped to Neverland. But it's more likely you remember what you want to and your memories are more in line with your state of mind kind of deal. From here, we see all of Peter's backstory. He goes with Tink to Neverland. He comes back as a slightly older child to see his parents because he missed them, and he thinks that his parents have moved on without him. From there, we see that he meets Wendy, and that every time that he comes back to see her, she gets a little bit older while he stays the same age, to the point where he comes back for her and she's an old woman. And that's when he sees Wendy's granddaughter and decides to not go back to Neverland in order to be with Moira. I understand why this part is here. They have to assume that the viewers don't know the original Peter Pan story, and they need to establish how he came to be in the real world and what his relationship with Wendy is. I get that. But this part drags. And this part makes young Peter look really creepy.
When I saw her lying there sleeping, that moment, something changed in me forever.
I shall give her a kiss.
Weird, buddy. You're weird.
Anyway, Peter rediscovers his happy thought. It's being a father. He grew up specifically to become a dad. He loves his kids. And finally, Peter Pan is back. He can fly again, except he's back too much. He actually forgets why he came back to Neverland and forgets that his children are in danger with his mortal enemy. Tinkerbell kisses him the way that she's always wanted to, and that's when Peter remembers his wife Moira.
Moira.
The Lost Boys suit up for war, and Peter Pan tries to reach out to his son Jack, who is fully turned against his father for the time being. It seems like Jack doesn't even remember that Peter Pan is his dad, actually. And then, yeah, Hook gets the war he's been dreaming about all his life. There's lots of fighting pirates, there's lots of tomfoolery. As a child, I specifically remember really enjoying the different gadgets that the Lost Boys would use in this war, and really enjoying the fighting scenes in general. But for the purposes of this video, I found myself skipping through it because I was bored. Peter saves his daughter Maggie, which gives Rufio the chance to fight Hook 1v1, to be the Peter Pan that he's always envisioned himself as and that he's always wanted to be. And he actually holds himself really well. Until he doesn't, and then he dies in Peter Pan's arms. This is actually a big deal because Lost Boys don't die to pirates. There's no real death in general, if we're being honest. This is a game of make-believe. It's Neverland. It's a land of imagination. Hook keeps trying to goad Peter Pan into fighting with him, but Jack is like kind of traumatized by watching a boy that's just a little bit older than himself dying right in front of him, and begs his dad to be done, to just no more fighting. He just wants to go home. Good call. Peter honors this until Hook decides to go after his children and threatens his children's children and their children, etc., etc. And that's when Peter Pan and Hook finally fight. Eventually, Peter's got Hook on the ropes and he is really looking his age.
I remember you being a lot bigger.
to a 10-year-old on cue.
Aggie and Jack convince Peter to have mercy, to spare him. Naturally, Hook does not accept defeat gracefully and actually pulls a sneaky little attack. But in doing so, he somehow wakes up the long-dead crocodile who falls down and eats Hook and then resumes being dead. It's unclear, but Hook is gone now and the fight is over. Before Peter leaves, he chooses Thudbutt to be the new Peter Pan, to take care of all the lost boys. This scene is actually very sweet. There's a good musical score going on, and then Peter's kids fly home first. And Peter flies home after them, but he flies home to a different part of London where he's able to say goodbye to Tinkerbell. You know that place between sleep and awake? That's where I'll be waiting. Fun fact, Carrie Fisher, aka Princess Leia, wrote this line. So, Peter's back in the real world and he's reclaimed his joy. He gives Toodles the bag of marbles that he was looking for at the beginning, and Toodles actually finds his happy thought and is presumably sprinkled with pixie dust and actually flies back to Neverland. The Banning family looks on to a snowy but sunny London afternoon and live happily ever after. The end. Friends and gentle people of the jury, I'll consider that summary a presentation of the case at hand. Each side will be allowed to have their arguments heard before you go deliberate. Prosecutor, you're up first. Thank you, Your Honor. Good people of the jury, I understand the urge to want to romanticize Hook. Who among us wants to remember peak Robin Williams with anything other than awe and nostalgia? Robin Williams is great in this, don't get me wrong. He's able to balance the cranky adult with the childish, whimsical humor that he was known for. This is a role that captures that essential Robin Williams charm and wit and whimsy. But like other movies from childhood, sometimes the past is where they truly belong. Take, for example, Exhibit 1, Space Jam. Oh, I love Space Jam. I don't want to, nor do I have to, remind you how painful that was to revisit. I don't have to. You can just rewatch my Space Jam video. Objection, self-promo. Sustained. Prosecutor, get to your point. Cheeky self-promotion aside, it is with my deepest sympathies that I inform you, Hook is mediocre.
No! God,
look,
please,
David
no!
Bowie turned down a role in this movie, and maybe there was a reason for that. This movie can't decide if it wants to be a movie for adults to play on their nostalgia and act as some, Oscar bait, or a not-so-serious movie for children. In one scene, we have a child literally die in the main character's arms, only for moments later, the big bad of the scene, the one who killed the child, to be quipping through the entire battle. And then he's de-wigged. Talk about tonal whiplash. Hook sounds like a fun movie to watch, the same way that eating at a Golden Corral. Objection. Relevant? Overruled. Thank you. As I was saying, Hook sounds like a fun movie to watch, the way eating at a Golden Corral sounds like a good idea. So many things to sample. None of them done particularly well. Okay, it is now the defense's turn. Good people of the jury, what the prosecution fails to recognize is that there's a reason that Hook was so popular. There's a reason that Hook is most likely one of the first movies you think of when you think of Robin Williams. And there's a reason why phrases like Rufioh or Bangarang still ring in the minds of people who watched this as children. And that simply is because Hook is good. Jude, goddammit. Get out of the courtroom, Jude! It speaks to the wonderful absurdity that is childhood and imagination. Objection, rose-colored glasses. My point still stands. And this movie is not just for children. It touches on the woes of growing up. There's this quote that I like that goes, in Greek, nostalgia literally means the pain from an old wound. Are you quoting Mad Men right now? Order. Let the defense go on. At what point in your life, it was the last day of your childhood, and you didn't even realize it was the last one until it was long gone? At one point, you found out that everything grows up and everything dies. This movie does a good job of reflecting on who you thought you were going to be in the future, and it does a good job at mourning the flighty nature of time. Peter Banning, as an adult when we first meet him, is a man so focused on the future that he is missing the present, and he literally doesn't remember his past. Hook, as an adult, is a man who's living in the glory days, who's waiting for them to come back, and who desperately wants for his present to be as exhilarating as his memories are. Neither are happy. Happiness comes when Peter Banning is able to balance the appreciation for the small things and the hunger for life that a child has with the wisdom and maturity that an adult has. In summary, Hook is a wholesome movie for all ages. Thank you. The prosecution can call its first witness. I call my first witness Steven Spielberg to the stand.
Damn.
And he couldn't be here today, but he did in fact say, and I quote,
I still don't like that movie. I'm hoping someday I'll see it and perhaps like some of it. I felt like a fish out of water making Hook. I didn't have confidence in the script. I had confidence in the first act and I had confidence in the epilogue. I didn't have confidence in the body of it. I didn't quite know what I was doing, and I tried to paint over my insecurity with production value. The more insecure I felt about it, the bigger and more colorful the sets became.
That becomes painfully obvious with the dumping of Peter Pan's backstory. The plot as a whole is sluggish. Though the potential is bright and colorful, what it delivers is just like the aftermath of the food fight. Muddy and messy. And then there's the race issue of this movie. Whoa, objection,
no.
lack of foundation.
Do that here.
This isn't that kind of channel, and she doesn't have the experience or the eloquence to be talking about that.
Indeed, your next point.
Okay, you know what? The prosecution calls the defense as my witness.
I'm here. Predestination? Are we doing?
No.
No? Oh, okay.
Get out of my court. Good luck with that. Not guilty. The prosecution calls the defense as my witness, so we can have a good old-fashioned debate, podium to podium. I guess this is the debate portion. I guess that's what we're doing now. All right, proceed. Hook has Robin Williams doing what he does best. Case closed. You lose. Leave this childhood classic alone. Hook's problems aren't because of Robin Williams. And even with Robin Williams, great acting can rarely save poor writing. Hook is as insecure as Steven Spielberg was when he was directing this movie. It didn't have the sturdy, focused center that it needed to properly shine. Use all the flowery language you like, but the message of Hook is pretty clear. It's about family and appreciating life. And the symbolism of clocks has been hammered in from the first scene. I don't know how you could have missed that. There's the watch that Peter gave Jack. There's the clock that Hook destroyed to stuff the crock with. Tinkerbell lives inside of a clock, and Moira is telling Peter throughout the movie that he's missing it. And underneath all of the fluff, Hook is actually able to go into a darker side of this theme with Captain Hook. Can we please pull up Defendant's Exhibit 69?
Don't try to stop me this time, Smee.
Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Hook's afraid of an old.
Hook is an old man who's terrified of aging and death. He spent the last 30 years of his life reliving the glory days, and he struggles with finding self-worth or self-confidence once he realizes that the great Peter Pan is now just a mundane lawyer. He threatens to off himself, but he's ultimately not able to do it because he's too afraid to die. And he compensates for this constantly.
Wow,
like with
did
the
you
museum
write
of
that all
clocks that are all
yourself?
broken, the giant stuffed crocodile in the middle of his pirate town. But underneath everything, at the very end, all we see is a sad, balding old man who's afraid to die. He's a foil character for Peter Pan, and ironically, he's more like a young Peter than the lawyer Peter that we see today, because Captain Hook is a man who never wants to grow up. He wants to keep running away from the crocodile, aka time, aka death, for as long as he's able to. But the crocodile catches up with him eventually. At the end of this movie, Peter says, to live would be an awfully great adventure, in stark contrast to the play. Are you done? And the reason for that is that he's grown into a peaceful acceptance that everybody grows up and everybody dies. And he's gonna be present with his family so he doesn't miss another moment of it. It's not the movie's fault if you need it spelled out for you. I don't need everything spelled out for me. Look, obviously this movie plays with symbols and themes, and it even does some of them well. I'm not saying everything about Hook is terrible. If everything was terrible, I don't think even you would be able to defend it. But what kind of symbolism or what kind of theme was I supposed to pick up when Peter Pan was kissing Wendy's unconscious granddaughter? I must have missed that.
No, you're just fishing for things that are problematic and nitpicking for things to be angry about.
No, it was creepy and weird. But let's talk about Tinkerbell for a second. Looking at how Tinkerbell gets over her crush of adult Peter Pan could have been a good reinforcement of the themes and symbols that are in this movie. That growing up isn't all that bad and can in fact help you heal some of those old childhood wounds. But instead, she serves two purposes. One is a deus ex machina whenever Peter Pan gets into a fight with Hook and he needs something to save his life. Twice. And number two is a failed temptress, where her job is to remind Peter Pan of how much he loves his wife by failing to seduce him. While he's in a child state of mind also, which is just, ew, that's weird, that's creepy.
Tink does more than that.
No, you know what? You're right. You know what else she does? She reminds Peter Pan of how much fun life can be. And you know what that makes her?
Don't say it. Tinkerbell is literally a manic pixie dream girl.
Ugh. Just bad.
No, seriously, how is it a movie that's 2.5 hours, almost 3 hours long, couldn't find a satisfying ending for Tinkerbell anywhere in there? Or Jack, for that matter. Or Wendy. Or Maggie. Or even Moira. Like, there are so many characters that could have had interesting interactions that the script just doesn't utilize and that we ultimately just don't care about.
I don't know what exactly you were expecting from this movie. We got details about the important characters like Rufio and Thudbutt, but if we had gotten details about every other little character in this movie, the story would be even more muffled than you're complaining about right now. There might be lost boys and pirates and mermaids, but the story is ultimately about Peter. And the reason for that is because this story is meant for adults who as children saw the play or read the book or even saw the original Disney animated version of Peter Pan. This is a story for them, to give them that spark of childish delight. The rest is just set dressing and goofs, presumably for the children that they are bringing with them to see the movie, because the movie is meant to be shared.
Yeah. You know what else can be shared? The flu.
Damn.
Families share the flu all the time, and it doesn't make it any less of a disease.
You're just defending this movie because it made you cry.
It did not.
Probably did. You cry it all the time.
Objection, lack of foundation, personal attack, bad form.
You really want to make me prove it? All right, be my guest. Can we pull up Exhibit 420, please? And for the jury, Exhibit 420. What is that?
Oh, this?
This is a pie chart of all the movies you've covered on this channel and which ones have made you cry. That's not that many. Girl, that's like over half the pie chart. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. Yikes. Are you okay? Do you need a snack? Oh yeah, well, here's some evidence you didn't consider. Fun Robin Williams fact. Robin Williams was really good friends with the director of the first Harry Potter movie and really wanted to audition for it. Like, specifically, he wanted to audition for the role of Hagrid, but he didn't even get the chance to because there was a production-wide ban on using non-British actors.
What? Okay.
And
what does that have to do with anything?
It doesn't. But I thought it was a really interesting fact while I was researching stuff for this video. Like, apparently, Michael Jackson was considered to play Peter Pan for this movie, so it's a good thing.
Enough of the fourth wall breaks, Your Honor. She has no case.
Oh, will you shut up? You can go choke on a clock, okay? Order! I'm getting tired of this bickering. Sit down, both of you. You both made your cases, and the verdict rests in their hands. Do you have anything else to say before they go back to deliberate? It's okay for something that you enjoyed in the past to be below average, really. Our tastes change as we grow up, and it's okay to grow out of something that you used to enjoy. It doesn't disrespect the memory of that thing that you used to enjoy or disrespect you as a younger person. Tastes can change and evolve, and you shouldn't settle and fight for mediocrity for the sake of nostalgia. One of the best parts about young children is that they haven't yet learned to care whether or not the things they like are considered good or bad. They like what brings them joy.
I shall give her a kiss.
There is always going to be someone who judges you for your taste in media. It's up to you to be brave enough to enjoy it shamelessly, provided it's not like illegal or gross, or like just use your common sense. I expect to hear your deliberations and any verdict that you may render in the comments below. Thank you and good night. Until next time, spay and neuter your pets.
Coming soon on video and DVD.